Excuse me, get my burp out before we bring our guest on. Hopefully that pre-show just started with me burping.
I don't know, but for some reason Facebook still isn't working.
Do you want to try it one more time, or
Maybe.
or
Let me check something.
should I let Alyssa in, or should I wait till we?
You can let her in.
Okay, I'll let her in.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey.
Alyssa.
Sorry, it's a couple minutes late. I had a blender incident.
Oh yes, yeah. Those are the worst kind of incidences.
When your blender explodes, it's really awkward.
Oh my god.
It's fine. How
What
are
were
you
you?
both?
Good, good.
I
I'm
was
great.
making
Well,
this.
okay, yeah. So is that everywhere in your kitchen, or
A little
did
bit.
just?
A little
Oh,
bit. I was like, oh, I will do the best that I can. It's fine. Everything is fine. It's fine.
oh my gosh.
It's one of those afternoons.
Um, this is. I'm about to ask the most random question about an old movie that
Ooh,
I'm
okay.
trying. What was the name? I just watched. A couple years ago we watched this. Oh, it's gonna drive me crazy that I can't come up with it right now because it's so specific that it's so hard to describe. But there's a scene in it where they're making this. They're making this. It's this little creature. It's this little brown creature. It's gonna come to me because I honestly, Alyssa, if you haven't seen this, I think you would love it. So I want to reference it to you.
I'm
But they're
like,
make they're
okay.
making they're making this concoction that when you drink it, I believe it turns you invisible. And the lasting imagery in my head is it's similar to this green color of your smoothie, and the stuff is just flying everywhere as they're making it.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Wait, why does this sound familiar? I'm like, is this familiar because I've seen this movie or is it familiar because it just happened to me?
it's one or the other. It's his little creature, and he's got this weird little snout, and he's pretty creepy, and it's like an early
Wait, is it
'90s.
Alf?
No, but he
Okay.
looks like Alf. He does look like Alf, but it wasn't a big mainstream
Huh.
thing like Alf. Oh,
Interesting.
Scuzz Bucket. Was that it? Scuzz
Scuzz
Bucket?
Bucket?
I'm getting closer. Fuzz Bucket. I think
I
it's
don't
Fuzz
even know
Bucket.
how to like Google this, but I'm
There it is.
so
It's
curious.
Fuzz Bucket. Fuzz Bucket. Oh my gosh, it's Fuzz Bucket. Okay, yeah. If you go, it's a much
Fuzz
creepier Alf.
Bucket.
If you just Google it right now, you'll see him, and he's terrifying.
Oh,
But it's an insanely cute little, like, it was like a Disney made for
it's
TV movie.
so it's probably on Disney Plus.
It actually might be on Disney Plus. Yeah.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. This is
Fuzz Bucket.
bizarre.
Yeah, it is
It
very bizarre.
is.
It's a
It's
very
on
like.
it's to-
Is it on there?
Yeah,
I
I'm
t-
also just laughing at the reviews of it which are that people hate it.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. It's very weird. It might be one of
Oh
those
my
things where,
god.
like, for you, Alyssa, this is part of our pre-show. So if anyone's hearing
Yeah.
this, it might be one of those things where you watch like 20 minutes of it, if you can even get that far in, and then be like, okay, I get the gist. Like
I'm
or
good.
or you're really into it and you keep going. It'll be up to each person. But
So funny. It feels like
yeah,
the kind of movie that you watch when you like really hate yourself and you just need to like watch something ridiculous to like
yeah,
distract yourself from the dumpster fire that is life. Like
totally. That
during the 2020 election, we watched all of the Twilight movies.
There you go. Yep. Just listen.
It
We
was a
know what we're
great
getting
time.
into. We
Yeah.
know what we're getting, but it makes us escape into this world of vampires for just a moment, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, totally understandable.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Um,
stop the recording real quick.
okay. Yeah, John is often quieter than me, or I'm just much louder than John. But John is working on getting our live stream video going, so
Oh,
that's
cool.
that's I think it's up
Yep.
probably.
Well, YouTube's been up and Facebook is now going.
Cool.
Hooray! Hooray!
Yay.
Hooray! All right. So, yeah. So, aside from your blender tragedy, how are you doing? How's life? I know you've been very busy lately, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're in one of those bubbles where it's like I'm working on exciting things and I should be excited, but mostly I'm just like crushed by the weight of all of the stress and we just kind of got to like get there. And then
Yep.
maybe I'll get a break after that. But my opera company's next show is coming up at the end of October, beginning of November, and it's a big like it has to happen now and fast thing because it's a response to the overturning of Roe, and I'm trying to like get
Oh
it out before the
yeah.
election, and we're trying to raise some money for Planned Parenthood and like all this stuff. So it's like really important to me and really exciting, but it's also like, oh God, we're doing this way faster than anybody should ever put on a show. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel the pressure of like wanting it to be really good and like it's just me. I'm doing everything as per
Yeah.
usual. So I'm like, I've
Yeah.
just accepted that this month of October 2022 is going to be a little bit of a nightmare for me, but for a
Mm-hmm.
good reason. And then afterwards, I will take like a 2-month long nap.
Yeah, yeah, good as you will deserve. But I mean, what a learning experience for you
Oh yeah.
to like, do this like you've never done something before.
Yeah.
And we will certainly, obviously this pre-show, but during the show, we would love to promote that for you. What's the name
Yeah.
of it? What's
It's
it gonna? What's
it's called Autonomy. We're sort of bouncing between just Autonomy and like the Autonomy Project
okay?
because it's gonna be a concert and an art gallery, which is also like, oh, I've never done anything like that before. It's like a multimedia thing. So I have a partner who's
Oh,
curating the gallery, but
cool.
it's like, oh, it's a whole big thing. I'm still so many moving pieces, but
I think you
Yeah.
should
we
let it
are,
decide its own name.
yeah,
Let
right.
it decide its own name.
Give it the
You know,
autonomy to make its own choices.
John, that's a funny joke, but it's also a really profound statement of like sometimes you just need to let go and let the name present itself to you.
Yeah,
It'll make sense when it makes sense and it'll be right when it's right. So,
it's
um,
true.
yeah, yeah.
It's true.
Well, so nice of you to take some time to be with us then
Yeah.
amongst your very busy month.
Yeah.
And yeah, we really appreciate it. We've reduced the amount of episodes we do here, which has been
Yeah.
hard, but as you know, it's mostly it's both of us, but I tend to take the fruit of the responsibility just because of my new podcast, and John's been gracious to work with me, but we are working on increasing the volume that we do. And but this is I told John when I got on with him, like, it just feels so good to be on with him and to be doing this and to have you here, Alyssa. Like, you're one of, if not the, like, my favorite guest we've ever had. So like, it's just, don't tell Ben Magnet I said that, whatever you do. But
That's okay. Ben and I are buddies now too. I was on his podcast last month and we had a blast.
I saw you guys referred to yourself as like, I forget what you
I
mentioned
think I
us.
said
I know.
podcast neighbors.
Yeah, podcast neighbors. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So yeah, very cool. So do you feel good? You have your quiz ready to
I
go?
do. Yes,
Okay.
I think what I'm gonna do, because I want you to be able to like read the answers. So I
Oh,
think
sweet.
I'll stick it in the chat one by one because I realized as I was writing it,
Oh,
if you see all the questions, some of the later questions will like influence the answers to the earlier questions.
yeah, got it.
So I'll just
It's
pop
funny
through them one by one.
when yeah, please do that. That's great. I sort of had that thought when I said you don't need to send them. I was almost going to be like, but you can send them if you want to, but I figured you would figure it out. So
Yeah.
and it's funny when we do get the questions. I think John does too. I try to do my best only to keep the one visible, but sometimes you accidentally get a glimpse. So
Yeah. But I think
okay.
yeah, I tried to do something similar to what I did with the last one, that it's like it's interesting information but also can sort of like guide a conversation to be hopefully interesting and informative to people who don't know anything about asexuality and want to know more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like I did the same thing with our opera episode, is that I'm like, okay, what are the misconceptions that I hear all the time? How can I like scream to the heavens that this is false?
Yeah. This is awesome. And this is, look, for me, and I'll say this on the podcast as well, like, I know what asexuality is, right? But I do not. I'm pretty naive, I think, overall when it comes to knowing a lot of this. So I will glad to be part of that conversation and sort of be the voice of the people who probably are going to benefit from this. So yeah,
I
it'll
love
be
it.
fun.
I'm excited.
We'll get started in a second, but another random story just came to mind that, I work at a radio station and we had a winner, and it was this woman. And then after the conversation, I'm always recording just to see if I can get people talking about their day. And I asked her what she was
Yeah.
doing, and she was like, I'm going to my daughter's opera performance of Into the Woods. And yeah,
Oh my
and I was
gosh,
like, your daughter's
was it at
yes,
Pacific Opera Project?
it was. That's because you recommended that.
Yes.
And I had this whole conversation with this woman about you and about that I knew what Pacific Opera Project was. It was an outdoor, because she was describing it. It was
Yeah.
like outdoors and magical, and her daughter is like fresh out of college, and she's on like the TikToks and I should look up her. I think Morgan. It's Morgan something. Maybe that's her last name. I'll look it up and send it to you because
Yeah,
she
please
does a lot
do.
of fun things, and you guys might maybe you guys can connect or something. But
I would love that.
I was like, what a small world! This is amazing. So yeah, you did
Yay.
a good job.
Oh,
And
that's
I
so
would
cool.
and I really wanted to go see it, but I think it was in its last weekend or something. And I was like, oh, I wish I found out about this like a week earlier. But yeah, that was very fun to discover.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
I love that.
Okay. How's everyone feel? Should we hop into our episode?
Yeah.
Hey, so another thing for possibly tidy up, Kevin. Do we want to mention that Dropkick Murphys album since it ties
Yeah.
in with the Woody Guthrie?
Good idea. Yep. Let's do that. So, Alyssa, I'm going to play our theme song. We'll do our little intro and introduce you. Then we'll do tidy up that we're discussing. We have a couple things that feel free to jump in the conversation. And then we'll get to your quiz.
Cool. Sounds like a plan.
Okay. I am going to hit the theme song. Y'all ready? Okay. 3, 2, 1. John likes tech and lives in Indiana, you know. Kevin likes the Dodgers and talks on the radio. John plays games on Xbox and on his Nintendo, while Kevin runs around LA with his mustachio. It's the Lack of Genius podcast in your ear holes at last. They don't know they're Mars from Venus, that's why it's the Lack of Genius podcast. Oh, it's so good to be here, John.
It
so
is.
good to see you. We have a guest who we'll introduce momentarily, but I said this to the guest, I said this to you. With our doing episodes a little bit less these days, it just feels so good to be here. I feel like I'm at home right now, you know?
It does.
Yeah. So grateful to see you and grateful to welcome back a returning guest.
Mhm.
One of my favorite guests, Don't Tell Ben Magnet. This is Alyssa Rocca has returned. Yay!
Yay!
Welcome, Alyssa. It's so good to see you. How you doing?
I'm good. It's so good to see y'all too. It was so much fun doing our first episode together. So I was so stoked when y'all asked me to come back. I was like, yes, yes, yes. More of this goodness. I love it.
Alyssa came on and did just one of my favorite episodes and quizzed us about opera music. She's a professional opera singer, has her own opera company, Paradox Opera, which you should all follow and support. And she was such an amazing guest, and we got such good feedback from our loggers that, you know, we kind of already knew we were gonna have her. I said, well, whatever you want to quiz us on, just quit. Like let's talk and find something. And so yeah, Alyssa, I'll let you introduce what your expertise is today.
Of course. Yeah. So when we first connected, we sort of bounced this around too. But the other sort of large part of my brand, because it is my identity, is being asexual. It's such a lesser known part of the queer community. I've tried to be a really loud vocal advocate for it in the content that I create and just in my existence in general. And so I was like, you know, I've encountered so much misinformation and so many people with misconceptions about what that means in my, I was like, this could be really cool to just like get my perspective on it and share it with y'all. And I also, like, disclaimer, I'm one person. I do not speak for the entire asexual community. So,
Yeah,
you know,
got it.
these stories and things today come from my experience. And then, of course, there's some just scientific information and, or maybe quote, scientific a part of what we're talking about. But yeah, I thought it was just a really important thing to continue to spread awareness. And I'm sure y'all have seen this too. Like I love seeing so much of what's happening like on TikTok and with the younger generation, that there is so much more knowledge and information about all these different things, all different gender identities, all different sexualities, just like all of that stuff that we didn't have access to as kids. Like I love that that's happening. And so I just want to keep being part of creating more information so that people don't feel so alone.
Yeah. And we're so grateful that you're going to be doing that, because I think it is part of an important conversation that as a culture we've been, I think, making great strides on, and certainly there's arguments to be made that we could be making better strides. But I look back at like even 10 years ago, you could probably say 5 years ago, but I'll say 10 years ago, you know, the even things in popular culture and how sort of uh, unaccepting, I guess the word is, of just the various spectrum of the LGBTQ culture and um I can look at that and say, wow, we've come a really long way. I think about even just the idea of the transgender community, and 10 years ago, how misconstrued that was, and
Hmm.
how just and now it's I feel like it's much better understood, and that's why when you have all these different identities, gender identities, there's an opportunity. I'm looking at this podcast, for example, as an opportunity to spread that awareness. And Alyssa, just so grateful to be able to do that through you, and for you to take some time to educate on this one subset of the community. So,
Yeah.
Hmm.
yeah,
Thank you.
love that you're coming on.
Thank you for sharing your platform with me so that we can
Yeah.
just keep adding to the conversation.
Yeah, totally,
Oh yeah.
and appreciate what you said also about I'm one person, okay? Like I
Yeah.
don't represent the whole community, and
I don't say like I am every asexual. Like no.
totally, and I think
This is where Kevin and I, as cishet men, say everything. We know everything for everyone. So
yeah, we will just find it. No way. That's a terrible attitude. um, uh, but that's I feel like um, that's part of what that there is this spectrum, right? And that people do identify differently within each sort of subset of any culture, really, and including the LGBTQ culture and the asexuality culture, and what I don't know if culture is even the right way to phrase it, but
Yeah.
identity. Anyways, Alyssa, really happy to have you on. I know I'm looking forward to learning a little bit. But we got some tidying up to do. Are you ready? Can we do a little bit of tidy up, and then we'll get into learning? All right, here we go.
Tidy up before we go any further with the show. Tidy up before we go fix our mistakes tonight. I wanna get it right. Tidy up.
Alyssa is 2 for 2 on singing along to our song so far, which
It's
which
really
obviously
hard
makes
not
me,
to.
makes me feel good. Now I may have written the lyrics to that, but that song clearly popularized by somebody else. So I can only take so much credit. Yeah, this is where we clean up mistakes from prior episodes, or just kind of tidy up things that are going on within the greater log community. I did want to do a short tidy up. Our last episode, Alyssa, it's okay if you have not listened, because I get that, but I'm saying this to Alyssa and to anybody who maybe has not yet listened to our Beep Baseball
Oh
episode.
yeah. It's
It
so
was
cool.
did you listen, Alyssa?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of my favorites. I've so far said that about you, and a little bit about Ben, and now about Jason. I love all my guests apparently, but Jason was fantastic, and I highly recommend going back and listening to that if you have not yet. But what was hilarious is the day it came out, he sent me a text, and he was like, "OMG, I'm so embarrassed. I had all these mistakes," and he sent me this list of corrections. And in Jason's defense, they were very, very minor things. For example, I'm not even gonna go through all of them, and that's not to discredit the corrections. Like I get it, they're but like for example, the home run line in the answer was 175 feet. Turns out it's 170 feet. Like 5 feet, not a big deal. I get it. Yes, he was incorrect in this information, but I say all this to say that if you go back and listen to the episode, you're really not being misled by the things that he says. They're just minor things. And one quick personal shout out is that the person who corrected him, it turns out I went to college with his brother. Jason has a teammate who I went to college with. And this person, actually, I hope he's okay with me shouting him out. His name is Darren Keepers. And if you go look up that name right now, Darren Keepers, there's this great video of him at our professional LA soccer team, LAFC. And it's this whole piece about how he listens to the announcer during the game while he's at the game, getting the calls fed into his head so he can feel what's happening, obviously without even being able to see any of the action. And it is such a beautiful piece, and it's so cool highly recommend looking into that. But
That's awesome.
if you haven't listened to the episode, do that, or you can visit SoCalBeatBaseball.org to get more information. I'll shut up for a minute because John, you introduced something to me that relates back to an old episode.
I do, and then I actually have something else as well.
Okay.
So, Apple Music has this nice thing where on Fridays, because for some reason the music industry decided to just release, like that's when new music gets released, is on Fridays. I don't know why. But Apple Music has this nice thing where it'll show you new albums of artists that you listen to and everything. And the Dropkick Murphys dropped a new album, and it's the album is called "This Machine Still Kills Fascists." And so, if you remember, we had a friend of Kevin's on named Dylan who did
one of
an
my favorite
episode
guests of all time. I just have to say,
and he did an episode on Woody Guthrie, which Woody Guthrie's guitar said "This machine kills fascists." And in fact, that album from Dropkick Murphys is all lyrics written by Woody Guthrie. And so it's basically covers in a slight Dropkick Murphys sound, but it not too much of Dropkick Murphys. But and then the last song on the album is they dubbed in Woody Guthrie singing the original version of a song. So
it is so cool. I've so far only listened to that last track, track 10 on that album, and it's so cool because you hear Woody Guthrie's voice, and then you hear the Dropkick Murphys lead singer voice, but it's produced so well, and it sounds so natural, and it's very moving to hear that actual voice. So yeah, John.
And then the lyrics themselves are pretty dark,
Yeah,
but
very poignant, very poignant.
Yes.
So yeah, that was fun. So
there you go. Was the first one.
If you enjoyed the Woody Guthrie episode and wanted to learn more, there's a place to go.
Yeah. The second thing is, the day that we're recording this, October 1st, is some of my favorite guests, my aunt and uncles. They did the sailing episode.
Yes.
It's my uncle's oldest daughter. She is getting married today. So.
Oh.
Congratulations to them. I know we're sad that we couldn't be there, but.
This is your cousin then. What's her name?
It is Erica.
That's great.
So.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
That's so exciting. And congrats to your whole family and Uncle Dale and Aunt Nikki, or Uncle Nikki and Aunt Dale, as I sometimes call them. That's very exciting. Thanks for sharing.
So, I mean, I know Uncle Dale reacted to our Facebook live feed, but I know they're not going to be watching because they're probably getting ready for the wedding right now. I'm not sure exactly what time it is today, but it's West Coast, so.
If their priorities are in the right place, they're going to watch our podcast and getting ready for their wedding. So hopefully they're still with us.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. And we'll do one other quick announcement that some of you may have already noticed is that we are going to be interspersing episodes talking about John's journey with diabetes. Our diabetes project is what we're calling it. And John has been brave enough to share with us in a real way, in a public way, about some of his struggles, some of his successes, and we're gonna check in every few weeks. And I'm trying to find ways that I can be on board and support John. But just by listening and hearing our journey, I'm saying our journey, but like hearing John's journey is a great way to support what John's going through, and I think probably diabetes, those who have the disease as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, and if you've listened to that episode already, thank you. But you would have heard that I have decided to try and run the Indy mini marathon, which is a half marathon, and I suggested to Kevin afterwards. He should fly out here and do it with me. So,
you sure did. Yeah.
We need the fundraiser because it's looking like airplane tickets for that week or that weekend is not going to be cheap from LA to Indy. So if you want to donate, money to us, we will gladly take your money.
That is true. John, I can always count on you to just say what I would take 20 minutes to beat around the bush saying, but certainly no obligation to send us money. That is the only thing that's holding me up right now from absolutely committing and saying, I'm doing it with you, John, I'll be there, is let me check my funding first. But maybe there's something we can do that is a fundraiser that maybe helps pay my way, but also helps give towards diabetes. And that's something, I'm going to brainstorm off with you off the air about, but I'm proud of you for signing up for this mini marathon, and I'm hopefully going to be by your side doing it. And we shall see. We shall see. But
Yep.
more to come for sure.
And
all
if
right,
anyone else wants to join me in it, let me know.
I think we got something going here. I think we got some fun stuff to look forward to. To tidy up when we take a few weeks off. So I feel like, does everyone, Alyssa, do you feel tidy? Do you feel like, okay, my life is all neat and clean now?
Oh man, if only it were that easy.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I'm gonna hit that quiz time jingle, and let's learn about asexuality here. Here we go.
It's time to take a quiz or two. Like a genius podcast doing this for you. You may fail, but it ain't no lie, baby, it's quiz time. Don't really want this quiz to be tough. I just want to pass one cause I failed enough. It might sound crazy, but it ain't no lie, baby, it's quiz time.
That is 3 for 3 on the singing along. Thank you, Alyssa.
You can't stop me.
Yes.
I mean, when you have a professional singer on it, you expect them to sing.
I was gonna say it would be weirder if you didn't sing along. I think so. I'm very, very appreciative of that. So
Weren't we going to have like you and her like record a song or something, like re-record one of them?
I think that was the sort of idea, is like, man, we got my voice on these when we have a professional opera singer in our midst. But there may be, we should start brainstorming about maybe a new jingle that we need for something and get it.
Well,
get
we don't have one for
that.
the Diabetes Project one.
Oh my gosh, we may have just spawned something. Yep. Okay. All right. We'll be tidying this up next week for sure and letting you know our update on that. But for now, our focus is on Alyssa Rocca and on being educated and a 5-question quiz on asexuality. So Alyssa, I'll kind of hand off the reins to you and you tell us what you got for us.
Sounds good. Okay, so actually, really quick before we do, how do I
Sure.
send you these questions? I just copied and pasted it into this chat, but it,
Yep.
as you can see, did that. I
That
have
works.
them all formatted, but if you
I
can
think
figure
that's
it
all
out
right.
from that, okay.
Yep, that looks fine. That looks fine to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Cheers. So
Cool.
I figured, what better way to start off this conversation and this quiz with the very simple but not so simple question of, what does asexual mean? What is asexuality? So
I love
This
this,
is our
Alyssa, because
first
by the way,
question.
I think in opera, literally the first question was,
Mhm.
what is opera? Which is exactly where we should start. Let's not
Yeah.
assume anything, right?
yeah, I always assume that I am meeting people at we know nothing and trying to find ways to, start with the basics without it being like, well, we're treating you like a kid, to be accessible, but also I will assume that you don't have the basic knowledge, because if we don't provide it and you don't have it, well, then everyone's going to be confused, right?
Well, I
Exa-
mean,
ex-
if we've proven anything, Kevin is a child at times, and we both lack genius.
yeah, exactly. We like genius. I love that motto in general. Let's turn this back to Kevin, because that's just what I do sometimes. I direct summer camps, and what I'm known for at these camps is not just when I tell a joke, but when anybody tells a joke, they literally look to me now and say, Kevin, I don't get it. What does that mean? Like, I've become the guy who explains the jokes, and I jokingly but somewhat seriously explain that as, I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, because I know what it's like to not get a joke and have it go over my head. And I
Is
almost
that because
sort
you're
of
so
wished-
short?
Yeah, I was a very short child, actually, but everyone's short
Same.
compared to you, John. So, anyways, I just say that to say I really appreciate where you're coming from. As let's start from zero
Yeah.
and go from there.
Also, I love that too. This is a brief tangent, but I actually, hilariously, I used to TA when I was in grad school, and
Uh-huh.
I got kicked out of a class I was TAing because I was too attentive to the students, and the teacher got annoyed at me. But
Oh my gosh.
I saw the class like glaze over. They like didn't know what was happening, and I
Yeah.
like cut her off, and I was like, did y'all understand that? And they all were like, no, we have no clue what's going on. And she got so mad at me, she kicked me out. I was
But how
like,
perceptive
but I
of
want
you.
people to know what's going on. Like,
Yeah, like she took
So-
it as a step over of boundaries, but you were like, "Look, if the important thing is learning here, let's make sure they're on the." Yeah, that's what it's why you would be a great teacher as a profession, but you are a great teacher in what you do and what you do share your knowledge about. So
Bye.
Can I do another brief tangent?
only if it's about you, John.
Well, it is in a way. So you mentioned, everyone's short compared to me, and
Yes.
I'm 6'7".
Uh-huh.
And have you watched She-Hulk at all?
Oh yeah.
Not yet. Not yet. Okay, good.
So
Alyssa.
so if you read the description in Disney Plus on She-Hulk, it says that she's 6'7". I would like to say that they misrepresent that height a lot. They show her as a lot taller than 6'7".
Yeah.
Oh, got it. I thought you were gonna say that you are She-Hulk. I thought that
No,
was the announcement
no.
you were gonna make.
I mean,
No.
that'd be cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. We got I think we got some good solid tangents out of the way here.
Right.
I think that was
Yeah.
that was much needed.
Do better,
right.
Disney.
We do better, Disney. All right. So number one is straightforward and simple in terms of the question, right?
Yep. What does asexual mean? What is asexuality? So here are our options. A, someone who does not experience sexual attraction at all. B, someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction. C, someone who is able to reproduce with themselves. Or D, someone who chooses to abstain from sex.
Ah, yes, I see the options and I hear them and I can appreciate the differences. I'm gonna read through them one more time for myself and for our audience. A, someone who does not experience sexual attraction at all. B, someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction. C, someone who is able to reproduce with themselves. And D, someone who chooses to abstain from sex. John, where are you at on this?
Well, on the spectrum of answers, I
There
think I'm
you
gonna
go.
go with. I think I'm gonna go with B.
Okay, B is someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction. I'm going between B and D, someone who chooses to abstain from sex. See, now what's interesting about that is that doesn't necessarily just mean like I don't consider myself an asexual person, but if I choose to abstain from sex, I don't believe that makes me asexual, which oh wow, this is super interesting. And it's showing my lack of genius on this because I guess it's the difference between is it a choice or is it someone who just does not experience these things? Okay, all right. I think that was the key that I needed. I'm gonna choose B also, John. I'm gonna go with B, someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction.
Both of you?
Final
Yep.
answers.
You are both correct.
All right, go
Yay.
us.
So I sort of formatted this with different things that I have heard people claim that they think it is, but it is
Okay.
not. So yeah, someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction. So it is not a choice, which is something that people have a hard time comprehending sometimes. I've experienced a lot of that.
Got it.
A lot of that. And
Yeah.
it's just like any other sexual orientation that like y'all are attracted to women. You don't choose to be attracted to women, right? Same thing.
Mhm.
It's exactly the same for all bubbles of sexuality, is that it's innately a part of you, not a choice that you make. So I
Yeah.
think that's a really important distinction, both for asexuality and just like the entire bubble of like all human existence, is that your sexual orientation is not a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, gosh, this first question has already made me realize that I think I am someone who was on that spectrum of thinking, oh, it's just like a choice that people make. So this has already been eye-opening for me. And I think if you rewind 2 minutes, you'll hear me having that epiphany live on the air of like thinking through it, like, oh my gosh. So thank you for explaining that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so important.
So asexuality and celibacy, not the same thing.
Totally different. Yes, exact. Celibacy is a choice to. I'm making the choice to not be sexual. Yeah.
As opposed
Alyssa,
to
you're
like-
knocking it out of the park already.
So for someone like me, like I look at people and I'm like, cool, they're people. Like never, my brain is not like, ooh, I have the sexual attraction. No, you will find that I talk about it hilariously awkwardly because I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that's like. I do not experience it. So,
Now, in your own, and if there's another question coming up, you can obviously hold off on this answer. But much like my understanding of sexuality in general, is this something that has always been with you? Is this something that as you developed into what is the age of sexuality, you noticed and became very clear to you?
so actually, that perfectly leads into a very funny story that I was hoping to tell, anyways. So
Awesome.
first of all, I want to say that anybody who's exploring their sexuality, like it can and does change for a lot of people, and that is okay. And it is just as valid to one day say, I think I'm asexual, to the next day say, oh, never mind, I think I might be like XYZ, whatever. It's always evolving. I've interacted with a lot of people like think that they found their bubble and then something changes and they feel guilt about it. So I just want to say, like, if anybody feels that way, please don't. We are allowed to evolve as people. Labels are there for you to about yourself and for nobody else. And if they change, that's cool too. So that's that tangent. But
It's
as
beautiful.
for
Yeah.
so sort of calling back to what we were saying earlier, that this information really wasn't around when we were kids. And hilariously enough, this I threw in this answer of someone who sexually reproduces with themselves, because when you hear the word asexual in school at our age, like, oh, it's these like anemones that like bud and then that's how they reproduce and that's what that means, right? But I so vividly remember being in high school, and I went to a performing arts high school. So like it was a very gay school, which I loved. But of all
In all the definitions.
yeah,
Yeah.
but so hilariously enough, I was like not interested in relationships at all, and I kind of got bullied for a little bit, but everyone was like, we know you're a lesbian, it's okay. And I was like, what school does that
Mm.
happen at? They're like, it's okay, like we know you just like are dating people because you like girls and you're afraid to come out of the closet. And I was like, no, I don't like
Wow.
anyone, I think you're all disgusting. And I think sort of around the age of like 16, proclaimed I'm asexual, thinking
Wow.
I made it up. And
Wow.
all these years later, I'm like, I picked the right one.
You did.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
But like,
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that was a real thing. I thought I made it up because we didn't have that information. And I was so other to all of my peers. I was
Mhm.
like, what seems to make sense? I guess this makes sense. I'm just not interested. I see all my peers dating people and I'm just like, ew, why? Like
Mm. Oh, that is
um
amazing.
so yeah, it was like it's such a weird serendipitous thing that I totally thought I made it up. And of
Yeah.
course that didn't help with like me feeling other for a really long time. But now we come to now, and part of what's so amazing about what I've been able to do with Twitch streaming is I have
Mhm.
found all of these other people who are asexual, and I'm like, oh my god, it's not just me, there's more of
Yeah.
us. Ah, this is so exciting, like I've never met another one of me. um
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, what a beautiful way through Twitch, but like to found a community. I
Yeah.
think your story probably mirrors a lot of people. Again, not just necessarily LGBTQ people, but like this idea of especially when we were young and it wasn't part of the cultural conversation. I think a lot of people felt very alone, and I don't pretend to know what their experiences are, so I certainly want to be cautious about how I'm talking about it. But based on what has been shared with me from others, is this sense of aloneness and thinking they were the only one who felt this way, and then thankfully, I know we have a ways to go, but we're at this place for a lot of people where they found their community and they realize, oh my gosh, I wasn't the only one that grew up with these feelings. So it's really
Yeah.
pretty beautiful to hear you share that's been your experience.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And I fully agree.
Yeah.
I think thank God, one of the amazing things that has come of this internet age is
Yeah.
that there are all of these groups of people who I'm sure they were the only one who now have a community of people. They know that they're not the only one. We have a long way to go of the rest of society like getting on board and not
Sure.
being jerks. But
Yeah.
that's where I think most people don't feel alone anymore, which is so valuable.
I think we need to petition Paramount because I think that's one of the few sexualities that they haven't done anything with on Star Trek.
Oh,
Oh,
is
it's
that
time.
true? They must have.
I don't think
know.
they've really done asexuality.
Isn't like canonically asexual?
No.
Okay, then I don't know.
John would know. John would know probably, right?
I
Or
feel
are we
like
gonna
I've
need to tidy
heard-
this up?
He was originally supposed to get married in the show,
Huh.
but then something happened.
See, I'm not that familiar with Star Trek, so I'm like, I feel like I've heard something being murmured about that, but I'm sure I'm wrong.
I mean, I could be wrong, and a character was written as being asexual, and it just didn't come across to me as that way. But
yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, for next time, I'll be curious to hear what gets found out.
Yeah.
All right.
But-
Well, we got the bases covered. Great first question and good conversation. Are we ready for number 2?
So say, what a perfect lead into number 2. Speaking of realizing that you're not the only one. My next question is approximately what percentage of all people are asexual?
This is great.
So this is based on a study that I found from 2018, so accuracy may vary, but
Okay.
here are the options.
Probably close enough. Yeah.
Yeah, close enough. So A, 3.2%, B, 0.6%, C, 2.3%, or D, 1.7%.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah, there's kind of a spectrum here of between 0 and 1%, 1 and 2%, 2 and 3%, 3 and 4%. Maybe that's a more confusing way to look at it. But again, it's 3.2%, 0.6%, 2.3%, 1.7%. What percent of people, of all people, are asexual? Oh my goodness, I love this. John, do you know what you're going to choose?
I'm just gonna go with C.
You're going with C, which is kind of a middle one, 2.3%. I'm tempted. I'm going to choose either the low spectrum or the high spectrum. I'm not sure, either 0.6% or 3.2. I just have to have a moment. Gosh, now I'm tempted to not choose either of those. Hang on. For some reason, 1.7, which is in the middle, is calling to me, and I may regret this decision, but I'm going to choose D, 1.7%. And John, you're choosing 2.3, correct?
Yep.
Are either of us
Well,
correct?
Kevin, you are correct.
Yes, I had a less. Sorry, John. Gotta hit you with that.
It is 1.7% according to this 2019 study. So this
Wow.
may seem like teeny tiny, but then you
Yeah.
realize that 1.7% of 8 billion people
Yeah.
It's a lot of people.
it's like 100 million people.
Wow. Wow.
I did the math. It took a while.
You did it on a piece of paper with a pencil and you you worked it all out.
It's like 100 million people. That
It's a lot of people.
1% of 8 billion is a
Mhm.
lot.
Yeah.
So while it is in the grand scheme of percentage of the entire population, it's not a small number of people.
Yeah.
And so this was something that I thought was really interesting because again, this has flowed so perfectly. I think a lot of us grew up thinking we were alone, and then you find these statistics and people are finally starting to like explore this as a real thing. It's like, oh no, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of
Mhm.
people that identify in that category, and we're out there.
Yeah, I love it because again, you could look at that number of 1.7 and be and that could if you're already feeling kind of lonely, that could fuel the loneliness. And then when you look at 100 million people and the communities out there, you've already made many examples that the doors that the internet has opened. One of the good doors that the internet has opened, because there are a lot of not good doors at the but this is a great place to find a community and to realize you're not alone. So I really love
Yeah.
that you shared that
Well,
number with us.
And to even, it's like these are big, big, big numbers we're talking about. So even to like bring it down to a more like imaginable scale, think about like you have a room of 100 people. It is highly likely that 1 to 2 of those 100 people are going to be in the asexual category.
Yeah.
Like 100 people. We all know probably way more than 100 people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that it exists. It exists. It's not something
Mhm.
that you can just kind of, for lack of better words, like dismiss as like, oh yeah, okay, they exist, but they're not part of my life. There's a very, very, very high probability that they are, and that this is why the education is important, and why we're glad that you're here.
yeah.
And by no means am I trying to what's the word that I want? Delegitimize that study, but I'm just curious where that study came from.
I'm not 100% sure. Let me see if I can find that again. Because I want to.
Yeah, it's the interesting thing about really anywhere you find information. It's like you're gonna find different,
So,
Well, I'm just asking more out of curiosity.
Yeah.
this came from a study by UCLA School of Law.
Okay.
Oh yes, that's fair.
The only reason why I was asking
Mhm.
is, have you ever heard of the Kinsey Institute?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
That's based down at Indiana University,
Mm-hmm.
of
Oh,
all
is that
places.
right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
in Indiana.
Oh, I did not know that. How
So I
about
didn't know
that?
if that was from them or somewhere else. So
I bet you
Yeah,
they have
no.
a similar study.
probably.
It's possible, but this was the most
Yeah.
recent one that I was able to find. So yeah, it's from UC.
Cool. That's
'Cause
right
there
by
are
me,
older.
John.
Yeah, that's so wild. But yeah,
What, take you an
there
hour to get there?
Yeah, it would. It's right down
Right.
the street, and it would. I mean, maybe not that bad, but yeah. Well, very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Very cool.
So there you go, legitimate study.
All right,
Um,
go us. All right. Well, we're ready to move on.
yeah.
Let's
So
do
the
it.
next is a true or false question, and we've
Yes.
sort of alluded to some of this. And this is
Okay.
a big one. That's why I'm like, you don't get the whole quiz because the answer to this question can be influenced by the next two questions.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So, question 3: true or false? Asexuality is a broad spectrum.
True or false? My inclination would be to choose true, and I kind of already. I mean, it's a little bit of an assumption, but just based on what I know about all identities, and even as far as, I think about diagnoses, even like the idea of now we talk about autism as being on a spectrum rather than just one lump of you are autistic,
Mhm.
and so I think about gender being a spectrum now. I mean, I say now because it's known. It always has been, but it's now understood that that's the way it is. So, anyways, I'm gonna choose true.
Same. True.
All
You are
right.
correct.
Yeah, go us.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
And this also sort of ties into the answer to what is asexuality, someone who experiences little to no. So
That's
this
a good
is
point.
this is a really important thing that again I think there's massive misconceptions about, which is why I wanted to bring it in such a like clear, blatant way. There
Mhm.
are people who identify as asexual but are not sex repulsed and still might desire to have a partner, like choose to have sex with their partner, even if their partner. There are people
Wow.
who are sex repulsed who are just like, absolutely not, keep it away from me. Like, I think that's disgusting. And there's a whole range of those things that all fall under the asexual umbrella. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in another question too. But
Okay.
there's also a lot of sort of different concoctions of this. So, like, for example, there are people who do not experience sexual attraction to random people, but like if they meet someone and develop a deep emotional connection to them, they could then develop sexual attraction to them. And that would still fall under the asexual umbrella. And so it's
Wow.
like there's a whole broad range of things that have now been put into this bubble that basically consists of like people who don't experience sexual attraction consistently like the norm, whatever the quote
Yeah.
unquote norm is.
Whatever
right?
that is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I sort of imagine, although I like, to me, I'm like, this is so weird. Like, what, people feel this way? But like, I guess the norm
Mhm.
is like someone walking down the street who like sees someone and goes, ooh, they're hot. Like, I want to get in their pants. And I'm like, what is that? Ew.
Yeah.
But I guess
yeah.
that's like the quote unquote norm. Like, don't come for me. I'm ace. I don't know how this stuff works.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this, and I don't know I don't know if this is a controversial or difficult question to be asked, but I think about this idea of what I've learned as far as why people are driven to to being sexually attracted to someone, and that part of that is evolution and biology of keeping the human race going, and that we are innately drawn to, in this example of biology, I guess it would be the opposite sex,
Mhm.
but so this isn't just a question about asexuality. This is like what, I don't even know what the question is there, but like what,
What is the
how,
mechanism that drives it?
yeah, like how do you
Yeah.
reconcile that? Where does that fall in this conversation?
I mean, I think,
Dopamine.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
you're
true.
right. Like we all still have that like lizard brain part of our brains that like drives certain things that we learn to control or don't learn to control, whatever. And
Yeah,
so I think you're right. I think that is certainly a part of it for many people, that like
hmm
that's just an innate impulse because people. But I
yeah,
think it's important to realize, because I think this is where the disconnect happens for some people, is it's like, yes, a lot of people have that and 1.7% don't.
yeah,
That
yeah, yeah,
whatever things, whatever or not firing or things, I mean, we still know so little about the human brain, but whatever pieces of the puzzle create your sexuality, like those bits just sort of got left out for us.
yeah, yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's a great answer, and I think there's also part of this conversation that maybe is worth mentioning, is that regardless of where you're at, whether you're on the asexuality spectrum, whether you're a straight cis male like me, there's no shame for what it is that you are innately born to be attracted to or not attracted to. If you are drawn
Mhm.
to, you know, a woman on the street, yeah, okay, don't catcall her, don't. But it's okay to be sexually attracted to her so long
Yeah.
as you're acting within reason of a good human being. And so,
Unless it's fascist, don't. That's not
yeah,
okay.
that's not okay. And write that on your guitar. That's, yeah. Anyways, but yeah. Anyways, I just feel like that's part of the
Yeah.
conversation, and probably part of what we've alluded to already about feeling alone. That maybe because you were in high school, and I say you in a general term, but you've shared this story, Alyssa. But a person growing up in high school and not being attracted to someone could probably very easily feel like there's something wrong with them, which could lead to shame, which could lead to all sorts of things. So,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
yeah. So it's, there's a very important part of this to own your identity and understand that that is what makes you you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
certainly
So
helps to know there are plenty of people who feel this way too. And I also just want to echo that there is nothing wrong with you, period.
yeah.
Whether you are on the asexual spectrum, whether you are anywhere else in the LGBTQ plus community, whether you are straight, whatever, like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yep. That's the bottom line, right?
Yeah. Like you are who you are.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and not to detract from sexual orientation, but that's true for a lot of different things.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
the internet has allowed a lot of people to find their people,
Yeah.
Mm,
both good and bad. Like I was listening to another podcast, and they were talking about they're roughly a little bit older than us, and they were talking about growing up as nerds and stuff, which I identify with, and
Yeah.
it wasn't until the internet really became a thing and whatnot that you know the nerds kind of took that identity back, and then you got Big Bang Theory and all that, which I have issues with Big Bang Theory and their portrayal of nerds, but it's helped that group at least reclaim, and so
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
asexual and other orientations are kind of using it the same way.
Well, and interestingly enough, it's tangent, but directly related to what you just said, John, is like even similarly, like as nerds growing up, like we were not the cool kids. Like we were the
Nope.
butt of like everybody's jokes and the kids who got bullied. And it's like, oh, now it's cool to be nerds. And I'm like, I look at the young kids and I'm like, I'm so happy for you, but also like I am a little salty.
Right.
You don't even know. You don't know what it was like.
No, and I don't want them to have to experience that. I'm just mad that
Yeah.
we had to experience that,
Exactly.
But
That's fair.
even now, like I own that I'm a nerd, obviously, as do, but I have found interestingly that I'm like, well, I am a 30-year-old fully adult human, but I happen to look young and wear a lot of like nerdy clothes and like clothes from Hot Topic because that's how I feel, like expresses like what I feel inside. On the outside, I feel comfortable like that. And people like can't handle it. Like people think I'm lying to them when I tell them I'm 30. They're like, no, you're a teenager. I'm like, that is not the compliment you think it is. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's a great overall point though, this idea of God, I don't know how to say it, but finding your niche and the ability that we've had to
Mhm.
be able to do that. And I hope that the Lack of Genius podcast can be a safe space for people to express themselves and,
Yeah.
and for various people. I don't know. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I appreciate you bringing that up, John and Alyssa,
Yeah.
for you.
Well, I mean, and something to tag on to that is, for the geek community, I know Will Wheaton was a big pusher of that. He had his like one of his, not autobiography, but like a collection of his blog posts called Just a Geek, and that kind of I bought that and that kind of resonated with that a little bit. And is there anyone in the ace community that's kind of been like the Will Wheaton for the asexuals? Or
That's a really good question. There have been several books that have been published in the last like year or so that are starting to actually focus on asexuality. I haven't read them because I'm really like nervous that they're gonna make me mad. I need to. There was I'm gonna forget the guy's name because I don't like him, but there's this guy who started this forum online called Aven, which is the asexual like chat forum that was sort of the first thing of its kind way back in the day. It still exists, but that was sort of the only place that asexuals could find each other and connect. And Netflix did a documentary on it and on him, and I watched it, and I was like screaming at the television the entire time because this guy like did the opposite of what I'm trying to do and was like, I speak for all asexuals, and like he totally did the like kind of icky like cis dude thing.
Oh no.
And at the end of it, he was like, anyways, despite being asexual, I'm in a totally happy, normal, sexually active marriage. And I was like, I want to punch people. And so I was so mad. I'm like, this dude, like, get him off my TV. Like,
yeah.
And I don't even remember. Yeah, it was just, it's like, look, if you want to represent this guy's experience, that's fine. But he really was like, I speak for everyone, and this is what asexuality is. And I was like,
he's not
okay.
the Lorax.
Yeah, like I'm BRB. I'm gonna go vomit now. Thanks. Like, I remember a friend of mine watched it with me, and he was very entertained by how angry I was. But I was like, I mean, my skin was crawling. It just like really did not resonate with me.
So at least somebody got something out of it. Your friend, they got entertained. Nobody else got anything out of it, though.
I mean, I don't even know if you can find this anymore. Like, I
hopefully
don't know
not.
What it's called. Don't
look.
It.
Don't look into it. Is what we're saying.
No, I think a lot of the new novels and writing publications are much better.
Yeah.
I do need to take the time probably after the show to sit down and read them, because if they are good resources, I want to say, hey, yes, like I resonate with this. I want to share this. I've thought about writing something myself, but I'm like, oh God, I don't know about that.
Well, I was just gonna say maybe Alyssa Rocket is gonna be the Will Wheaton of nerd culture to asexuality.
Well, I mean, and it wasn't just he wrote his book books and stuff, but he also was an activist. He would go to events and stuff like that, and was basically just taking the word geek or nerd back.
Yeah.
He was also, a big proponent for treating depression and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I think part of the great thing, at least in terms of asexuality, and for right now, like Alyssa, you don't have to be the Will Wheaton of asexuality. You don't have to write a book. Maybe someday you will. Maybe someday you'll get motivated to, or it'll make sense to you what that is. But right now, just being part of the conversation with us and
Mhm.
continuing to do so on your Twitch streams and to be a voice and to be an asset and a resource and an ally is a great way, is a great place to be. So
Yeah. I think honestly, the most important thing to me is to just be like really aggressively visible.
yeah, good.
And it's like you don't have to make these things like a badge that you wear around your neck and like scream at people and this be your entire identity.
Ace as fuck is a fan that we're looking at right now. Which that was a term I didn't even know was ace. I didn't know what that was at first, but look at that. You have a gavel?
Oh yeah, which I made, by the way. Also, like this is literally like my Twitch stream in a nutshell.
I love it.
This is my
There's a
other
flag.
favorite one.
That's a reverse card?
Yeah,
that is so good. Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
So you don't have to be that, but
Mhm.
I think it's really important to.
I love the fan was ready to go, by the way. Just open
yeah.
up the fan. Oh,
It's
that's
such
great.
a good sound.
I
too.
think
tried to
think
break
it's
the mic.
fair to say, Kevin, she's our ace reporter.
Where do I have my sound? Hang on, wait. I need to be better about this. Give me a minute. Everybody hold for applause. Let's see.
And this is where we find out Kevin's gotten a little rusty.
Well done, John. Well done. Yes,
I
congratulations on
did-
that.
I do the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney games. So-
No.
Oh, so there's a series of games called Ace Attorney with a
Mhm.
character named Phoenix Wright. They're wonderful. They're like lawyer games, but
Cool.
they're so fun. But anyways, anyone who's watching can see this hilarious wig head in the background. I did
Yeah.
a stream at one point in which I was the Ace Attorney.
That's great. That's great. I
and
love it.
Just never left my studio, but.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, I think it's really important, actually hilariously kind of similar to my existence as an opera singer, to just be as authentically myself as possible, be really visible and be like, I am these things. And
Mhm.
also I am a 5 foot tall woman who makes all this sound and is asexual and like am a normal person in like the not
Mhm.
gross way. Cause like,
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Like I'm a functioning person on this planet and a healthy, happy person. If
Yeah.
maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but yeah, that's a great place, and it's really inspiring. I think we can all take something away from that to sort of reflect on who we are and to be proud of who we are, so long as
Yeah.
we're doing so in a responsible way. And so that's great. I love to hear it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's move on, shall we? Number 4. By
Let's
the way,
do it.
where are we? I think I'm winning, right? I think I'm 3 for 3, and John, you're 2 for 3, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yes.
Because let's face it, that's what we're really here for, is winning
Yeah.
or losing. That's the important thing. So we got to make sure we keep tabs on that.
I mean, that's
So
true.
we're trying to figure out who's the ace at the ace quiz.
Yes. I already have it down again. Hang on, there it is. There we go. Okay. All right, on to number 4 we go.
Alrighty, number 4. So this one's interesting. Question 4 is another true or false.
All right.
So true or false? All asexuals are also aromantic.
Wow. Which that in itself could be a whole nother okay. I love this, because sort of what I'm sensing is that all asexuals are also aromantic. My tendency would be to choose false on that, because what I'm guessing this means is, if it is false, that a person who identifies as asexual could also potentially be into being romantic, if I'm maybe my assumption is romantically connected to someone, emotionally connected to someone. I would guess that there's not a strict, like, if you're asexual, it means you can't be romantic at all with someone. So that's sort of my vomit of thoughts right now. So I think I'm gonna choose false. Where are you at, John?
I'm gonna choose false as well.
Okay, how do we do?
You are correct.
Yeah.
And actually, Kevin, your thought vomit was perfect.
As
That's
yeah,
exactly the
as it
point.
tends to be. Okay, all right, got it.
That's
Got it.
exactly the
Wow.
point. It's exactly why I included this as well. Is again, I think there's a lack of understanding that sexual attraction and romantic attraction are two separate things. For a lot
Mhm.
of people, they coincide and are the same thing, but they are not intrinsically tied. And you can have any concoction of these things. Like I know actually like a lot of bisexual people that I've interacted with will find that they're sexually attracted pretty equally to all genders, but find that they are more romantically attracted to one or another, and
Interesting.
or
Yeah.
vice versa. Anything, there's they're not the same thing. And
Yeah.
I have found that a lot of like straight cis people don't they have a hard time understanding that they're separate because they really aren't for that bubble of people. But so it's like, I think this is important because you can be asexual and not aromantic. You can be aromantic and not asexual.
Mhm.
And again, whole bubble of those things. So there are
Or
people,
you could be both, I
or you
assume,
could be
right?
both.
You could very much be both. That yeah, raising your hand proudly. Yeah, there you are. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. This thought has come to my mind several times, and I'm not sure I'm going to articulate it accurately, but part of the learning that I've been doing in my life, and through hearing other people's experiences, is this idea too of I'm there's sort of a lack of intimacy among a subset of the
Mm.
culture, and I've heard stories of many people who are in committed relationships, but are the term that I've heard is intimacy avoidant. There's sort of this
Mm.
idea that they only are sort of engaged in the sexual part of the relationship, but when it comes to the emotional part, there's this disconnect. And I don't necessarily think that is a and maybe this varies by situation. I don't think that's necessarily meaning that they are on the aromantic or asexuality spectrum. Maybe they are, but there's also this sort of idea of oh God, maybe I'm bringing up a nature versus nurture thing here, because maybe there was this part of their upbringing where they didn't receive any emotional
Mm.
connection growing up. And so as a result, it's been a struggle for them to learn. And I'll admit that I have fallen into this, and I've learned a little bit about myself. And I'm not going to dig too much deeper there, but um, yeah, I think maybe what I didn't realize I'm bringing up is that there is an important distinction between, yes, maybe there is room to grow and develop in either of these areas, and that's probably worth looking at your childhood and worth what you went through growing up. But there also is, just again, you are born a certain way, and that you are
Mhm.
born with these traits of being either sexually or romantically uninclined or inclined to people. I don't know if any of that made sense, if you
It,
really
it
want to talk
did.
about word
No,
vomit, but yeah.
no, it did. And I think you hit a lot of really important points that I kind of wanted to talk about too, is that you're right. These things could be caused by nature or they could be caused by nurture. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and be able to separate it. That yes, there are people who could perhaps think that they are asexual or aromantic or exhibit behaviors that fall into those categories, but they were caused by trauma or what
Mhm.
have you. And that is acknowledging that that is possible but not mandatory is, I think, really
Mhm.
important, because I have seen that in some people that I know, that there's childhood trauma that causes things, and that makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense because trauma is awful.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who've interacted with me who don't understand the concept of asexuality. It's just like they can't comprehend it. And their immediate train of thought is, oh, you must be damaged. You must have trauma. You must
Wow.
have daddy issues. You must
Yeah.
have, and they just assume all these awful things. And I'm like, none of that happened to me. Like,
Yeah.
very
Mhm.
lucky that I like did not have a traumatic childhood. I was not assaulted as a child. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't have sexual trauma from as a child. So no,
Mhm.
that did not cause my asexuality because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is hard for some people to process. But I'm glad you brought it up because again, like both are possible and equally valid. And
Yeah. And
yeah.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Mhm,
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no. You go. Because I said and then immediately lost my train of thought.
Well, I appreciate your explanation, and there's almost like an embarrassing feel. Like I certainly don't mean to bring that up as as uh, as a way to say that I believe that it's always. And I think you understand what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
It sort of reminds me of again before just being gay was part of there was an understanding that was sort of the default of what people wanted to say was, oh well, they must have been touched as a child, or whatever terrible things that they might have assumed. And 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 we know that's not the case, that you are born
Mhm.
a certain way. And I think again it goes back to this thought that I like to share, is that regardless of if you have these feelings because of something that happened to you at a young age, or if you were just born with it, there is no shame in any of those things, and there are resources and communities for you regardless of the situation. And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so grateful to be having this conversation, that explanation, because it's a big thing that I'm learning in life, is that two things can be true.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
you can be a certain way because you were born with it, or you can be a certain way because this is what your environment was. And so yeah, I appreciate that distinction and the clarification.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought it up because I think you've put it very eloquently. And I think sort of the bottom line of it is life is not black and white.
Yes.
There's so much gray and it's so complicated and nuanced. And I think it's just really important for people to remember that when they're approaching any situation is
Yeah.
almost never is it going to be one or the other. It's almost
Hmm.
always going to be somewhere in between. Whatever it is.
uh
Like literally all things in life.
exactly. And there's a certain beauty in that gray area, right? And I think you said that really well. So yeah, yeah, really well put.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's part of why I struggle with Twitter because Twitter does not like gray things.
Twitter is black and white, man. This is the way it is. This is fact. This is how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally hear you.
Just like
Well,
but
all right.
nuance.
I know, nuance. That's such a powerful word, such a key thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we somewhat sadly, but also excitingly, have one more question. We only have
do.
one more question, but yay, we
Mhm.
get one more question.
We have one more
Hooray!
question, and this one is gonna become like I'm excited for you to experience this question. So
Okay.
now that we know that asexuality is a spectrum, it is an umbrella. There's all these different aspects of it and sort of different ways to experience it. My
Mhm.
final question is, which of these does not fall under the asexual umbrella?
Oh
So
my
we have
gosh.
A, demisexual, B, omnisexual, C, lithosexual, or D, phrasexual.
John, I'll let you go ahead and take this one.
I
No,
mean,
I
I
yeah.
know 3 of them. I just don't know the last one, asexual.
Yeah. I could sit here and go down the word vomit trail of like trying to dissect each of these, because I think, and I'll read these choices again: demisexual, omnisexual, lithosexual, phrasexual. I'm sure if I sat with each one of those and worked through it, I could probably come up with some. But I'm gonna play my sort of naive, ignorant card that I'm not very well versed or educated on any of these. So for me, it'll be a little bit of a throw at a dartboard. Um, but which of these does not fall under the asexual umbrella? John, are you leaning towards anything?
Between A and B.
A is demisexual, B is omnisexual.
I'm gonna go with B, actually.
I'm going to choose something different from you just to give us a chance to tie potentially, because right now I'm 3 for 4 and you're 2 for 4, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. I'm
3
one
for
up
4.
on you. There it is. I'm going to choose the one that you don't know, John, and say phrasexual is not under the asexual umbrella, just to choose something. How do we do, Alyssa?
Okay, so Kevin, you said D. John, you
D.
said B.
Mhm.
Yes.
John, you are correct.
John, you got it, and me, and that means we tied, which is feels appropriate. That feels good. Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted to include a question. A lot of these subcategories are not terms that people are very familiar with, and there are way more than just these. But I think these are sort of big ones that it's interesting to learn about and and also when I found a lot of people when they learn about these sort of sub bubbles go, oh, that's me, and explains things that like people hadn't heard of before. So I'll just go down the list. So we know omnisexual is the one that does not fit.
Well,
Because
am I correct in thinking it's like the exact opposite of asexual?
yeah. So omnisexual is I'm gonna read this off of this page so that I make sure that this is exactly correct. So omnisexual is sexual attraction to people of all sexes and gender, wherein gender plays a role in one's attraction.
Oh,
So there are other types of sexuality where someone is attracted to all people and gender does not play a role in their attraction. So omni, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. There's all sorts of bubbles.
Pan
Yeah.
is the one that doesn't, right?
So omni is someone who is attracted to all people regardless of their gender. However, gender does affect their attraction.
Okay. I get that. Yeah.
But so demisexual, the first one, is actually something I referenced earlier, but very intentionally did not give a name to, which is
Nice.
someone who does not experience sexual attraction until and unless they have a deep emotional connection with someone.
Got it.
And
That's what demisexual is.
Yeah. And so, it's sort of funny because I've struggled with the existence, like I fully admit, I've struggled with the existence of demisexual under the asexual umbrella because when I hear that just sounds normal to me. And so when people are like, no, that's not the standard, I'm like, huh, well, that's confusing to me, but like I can
A certain subgroup would prefer that to be the standard, but
right. And
let me make sure I understand it correctly. Demisexual. So you would be a person, and for right now, this is under the asexual umbrella, but you would be a person who typically on day-to-day basis, no real sexual attraction to anyone, but they then develop an emotional connection with someone. And then, and as a result of that, they eventually become sexually attracted to them as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Imagine
Okay.
if Jay and Silent Bob decided to finish
that's
their heterosexual bromance.
Yeah.
Got it. They had the emotional connection and then it turned into a sexual one. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. Yeah. And I get your struggle, and I'm trying to sort of wrap my head around what my experience has been or the way that I see others. I don't know. I have to chew on that a lot more, but I appreciate you sharing that you do struggle with that and you see that as normal. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I obviously I think demisexual people are valid. I now understand how and why that's part of the bubble. And it's like most of the time it's some form of like, if you're just walking down the street, you're not going to look at someone and be like, ooh, spicy.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I will add to that though, that just because you're asexual doesn't mean you're like blind to like visual attractiveness. Because I've definitely I've had people, not so much now, thank God, but when I was younger who really didn't understand it. And like I'd be watching Doctor Who and be like, oh my God, David Tennant is so hot. Like he is so attractive. Like that is just a chef's kiss of a man. Yes. And I would have peers who would be like, see, you're not asexual. You said that man is hot. And I'm like, I don't want to have sex with him. I just think that he's visually appealing. Like
sure, you can still appreciate beauty in that sense. You can still appreciate what is, and you still have a definition in your head of what is beautiful. It just means you don't necessarily want to go to bed with them.
Right.
That's not what that equates to.
I mean, Kevin, I think we can both say that Dwayne Johnson's a good-looking guy. It's the exact same thing.
That's a great point. I see beauty in men all the time, but because I am a heterosexual male and that's the way I was born, I don't want to have sex with The Rock. I'm sorry, The Rock. I hope he
Right.
doesn't write us a letter being outraged at that. But
It sounds like a really
Imagine.
hard time there.
I think you just got like a real deep cut at The Rock. Like, I don't know how he's gonna recover from that.
yeah, I don't know. I may have just killed his career. I'll write him a
Yeah,
letter
I-
preemptively.
And at least you're not going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Oh my God, John! I just. All right.
Incredible.
Okay, so demisexual, we know omnisexual. Are we moving on to lithosexual?
Yes. So lithosexual, lithosexual actually had a former name that is not so commonly used anymore called acoisexual.
Hmm.
But it is a term for someone who feels sexual attraction only for people who do not reciprocate those feelings.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Only
So
feels
it's-
sexual attraction to someone who does not reciprocate. So they're attracted to them. They express in some form or another their attraction, but part of the attraction is that somebody is not sexually attracted back to them.
Yeah, so typically, from my understanding, is like it's more of a like imaginary thing. So like
Mm.
you like see someone and you're like, oh yes, I'm sexually attracted to them. But then the second it becomes a possibility that they would reciprocate and want to engage in anything, you're like, oh, never mind, actually, like gross, no.
Wow. Wow. That is very I did not know there was a term for that within at least within the asexual community.
Yeah.
Um
That's not something that I have a lot of personal experience with, but if there are people, and this is sort of just like shout out to anyone who identify as lithosexual who want to have more of a conversation about that, I'm sure interested in learning more because I think it's
Yeah.
just hearing people's personal experiences helps us all have a more vivid picture of how these things function and how our brains tick.
And so when I saw litho, the immediate joke in my head went, okay, they're sexually attracted to books, which obviously isn't what that means.
No, but there
But-
is actually sapiosexual is
Right,
someone
is
who
intelligence.
is attracted to intelligence.
Oh, intelligence.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
But I guess I'm kind of curious as to why they chose lithosexual. Is
Oh,
it
yeah.
just because of that fantasy aspect, or
I think it must be. I'm opening a deeper page to see if I can find. See, the term was originally coined by someone on Tumblr, shocker, in 2014, and yeah, I'm not finding a whole lot about the necessarily
The origin.
of why that prefix was chosen, but this page that I'm referencing says it describes someone who feels romantic attraction, but this is lithoromantic, but romantic or sexual attraction, but does not want it reciprocated or loses that attraction when it is reciprocated. They may enjoy romantic relationships in theory, but may stop feeling romantic or sexual attraction once in a relationship. So yeah, I don't know why that's the prefix that was chosen.
Well, something you said, Alyssa, that I wanted to sort of add to is that if in terms of lithosexuality or anything really that we've said, I know John and I are definitely open to having a conversation or we're
Oh, yeah.
on the various social medias. Please let us know.
Yeah.
We will tidy these up. We will even bring you on if it makes sense but we will share those thoughts. And you kind of already said it. I don't want to speak for you, but we'll definitely give your various Twitter, Twitch, Instagram handles, whatever ways to
Yeah.
contact you. And
Yeah,
it
please.
sounds like you're very open to having that conversation as well. If there's anything that can be expanded upon.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to include this question to sort of bring awareness to these things, but I fully admit they're not my experiences. So I don't
Yeah.
pretend that I speak for people who have these experiences. I'm reading textbook definitions for these subsects. So
Got
if,
it. Mhm.
I mean, I do want to say anyone who experiences any of these things, who identify with these terms, like, I'm curious. I'm sure y'all are too. Like, please add us and continue the conversation because it's important, but also it's really interesting.
Yeah. Good chance to learn.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then the last one is phrasexual.
The last one is phrasexual, which is sort of the opposite of demisexual. So, phrasexual is someone who experiences sexual attraction to those who they do not know very well. So, according to this definition, for some phrasexual people, they may initially be attracted to another person. However, they find that their sexual attraction fades over time, particularly as an emotional connection is formed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This is all so eye-opening to me because I, there's a certain amount where with each of these definitions, maybe not each of them, but where some experience like this with somebody I've encountered in my life comes to mind. Like and that's not to say that I'm going to put them in this bucket of, oh, that must mean they're this, but
Sure.
it tells me that there are names for these things, and if this
Mhm.
is something that a person identifies as or finds this is the typical pattern for me, that I don't know, in some ways there's a home for you. I don't know if that's quite
Yeah.
but there's a community for you. You're not alone. This is something that clearly exists among a large subset of people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and there's a name to it. There's a name for it.
Mhm.
I think sort of similar. I think I said this earlier, but labels are there for you to use if they help you and they're there for
Mhm.
you and nobody else. So if finding a name for your experience makes a light bulb go off and go, oh, that's my experience. I'm valid. There's other people. If that's something that like is useful to people, I want
Mhm.
people to know that these things are there for them and that there is a community of people who identify as any combination of these labels and that they are not alone. But also, if you don't like labels, throw them out. Who cares?
Sure, you don't need them. You don't need
Yeah.
them. And it's also not, it's not our job to put labels on other people, right? Like that's who cares if you're worried about somebody else putting a label on you. Like at the end of the day, it's what you want to identify as and what you feel comfortable putting on yourself. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, I guess,
Yeah.
is the
I,
bottom line.
I try to just sort of be like, hey, this exists if you want it. And just like
There it is.
offer
Here's a platter.
the education.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's
And
my offer of education. Yes.
like I had a conversation with a friend of mine that like somewhat recently, and he was explaining his experiences to me, and I just sort of offhandedly said, that kind of sounds like what I understand to be aromantic. Have you looked into it? He was like, huh, and then went down a Google rabbit hole and was like, this is me. And
Amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and so I was not saying I think you are this. It's just like what you're describing sounds like this. Research it if you want to.
Yeah.
And
If you're interested, go ahead. There it
and
is.
yeah, and it ended up being a really eye-opening thing for him that he discovered that he is romantic, not asexual, and
Wow.
that's again why like he's felt very othered and
Mhm.
Wow.
I get it. I'm like, at least from my perspective on the world, I can imagine presenting as a cis straight man who is not interested in relationships at all can be very like other feeling. And
Yeah.
so it was nice to sort of help him find something that made him feel like, oh, I am normal, like this is fine.
Mhm.
Well, Alyssa, you've not only been very generous with your time, but you've been very generous with this platter of asexuality that you've offered to everyone. And I hope that that I hope that somebody took something away from this, which I'm very positive that they did. But B, that maybe you reach somebody who you've presented this information and allowed them rabbit hole. So
Mhm.
appreciate you for
Yeah.
being such a great
Yeah.
representative of this community. And I want to make sure that we take a minute to plug you and what you've got going on. I would love for you to share your various ways to contact you. And also, we talked in the pre-show about an upcoming show that you're working on for Paradox Opera. So plug yourself. Let's have this is Alyssa's time to shine. Let us know.
Sure. Well, so if you're interested in just me as a person, I'm at Divatron 9000 on literally anything. I'm on Twitch, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, mostly Twitch and Twitter these days. And if you're interested in watching my streams, we would love to have you. But also, if you're interested in learning more, if you want someone to bounce things off of about asexuality, like please at me. I think my DMs are on private, but you can find me. I'm findable.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to talk more about this with anybody who's questioning or exploring or just wants to hear other people's experiences. And we also have a whole community of other asexual people in my Twitch streams. So there's plenty of us with plenty of experiences if that's something that is interesting to you. And then on the opera side, my company Paradox Opera, which is at Paradox Opera, again, on literally everything. We have a show coming up that is premiering on October 31st. Oh my God. And it's going to be running for the entire first week of November prior to this upcoming midterm election, called Autonomy. It's a concert/art gallery, all of new works in response to the overturning of Roe. And we're going to be donating everything that we make to our local Planned Parenthoods here in North Carolina. But we also are going to be live streaming the show also on my Twitch channel. I think November 1st is going to be the live stream, but keep your eyes on our socials if that's interesting to you. There'll be lots of information coming up in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
Awesome. Yep, I highly recommend following all of the above. Alyssa is very entertaining on her personal channels and a lot of fun to watch and a joy. And then Paradox Opera for Reals is a great follow because you're going to get all this information and I highly suggest just supporting what Alyssa does because Alyssa, you're one of the good ones. You're one of the good ones. And I'm and shout out to our homeboy Grayson, who is the one who connected us in the first place. You know, Grayson's been a great person in my life over the last couple years that I've really gotten to know him. And he brought you into our lives and as a result into our loggers' lives. So couldn't have happened without him. So special shout out there.
Yeah, seriously. He's one of my OGs too. I'm like, big shouts out to Grayson.
Yeah, it's so funny thinking about the first time he brought you up to me and just was describing the various, the various things that you do. And I was like, oh, let's get her on. Let's get her. So I was just so happy when it worked out. Alyssa, thanks so much for this. I can speak for myself here that my eyes are open. I've learned so much and that feels good. I feel enlightened. I feel educated and I have much more to learn, but this is a great place to start. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you both. Thank you for being such gracious hosts and for, again, sharing your platform to help continue a conversation of education and compassion and helping us just spread more information. And honestly, I just hope little by little that we can affect people to being more loving to each other and accepting of everybody's differences and make the world, like 2% less bad.
Hopefully.
Let's do it. 2% amongst 8 billion people is pretty good.
Yeah.
So if we can get it 2% less bad,
right?
We're on the right track.
That's like 160 million people.
that's a lot of less bad is what I'm saying.
It's pretty awesome.
Right?
Pretty awesome. All right, Alyssa, thanks so much and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.